Hello students, today we're going to be talking about mixed media artwork. We're going to talk about some different techniques that you can try for your mixed media artwork this week, but I wanted to start by showing you a piece of mixed media artwork that I have made. This piece of art I actually made by combining lots of different materials and techniques such as paint, collage, paper, maps, and something called image transfer, which is something I will show you how to do, which is how I got the eyes on there. I just wanted to show you how a piece of artwork can include many different materials to convey an idea. This piece is actually all about my search to become a teacher by finding a teaching job. So it includes lots of different snippets of paper from tests I had to take to become a teacher, applications, job postings, letters of recommendation, all those fun things. And I incorporated maps because I thought it would be interesting to show that it's sort of like a journey. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Now let's get into some different mixed media techniques that you can try this week. I've divided my paper into 6 squares because I'm going to show you 6 different techniques that you can try today. Some of them you've probably heard of, others probably not. So I started by giving my paper a little bit of texture. So I went to the art store and I found a scrap pack, basically just pre-cut random pieces of paper, all different textures. This is an easy way to make a background, but you can also just use watercolor to create a wash in the background, another kind of paint, paper, book pages, sheet music, really anything you can think of to add to your background. I really want you to think about the idea of your art piece that you're working on. So make sure you pick a background that would complement what you're working on here. But I just started with the scrap pack to give myself a simple background just to show you, because mixed media techniques are a lot more interesting when they have something behind them. Not just plain white paper, but some kind of texture or writing or something else going on in the background there. So we're going to start with a simple technique of collage. Collage is just when you layer different pieces of paper, magazine clippings, things together, and you're just gluing them together with glue. Something cool, though, that I like to think about with collage is that I can include paper, but I can also include objects, things that I have around my house. So I've gathered up some old ticket stubs from movies, gym pass, because I think these add some extra interesting pieces to a collage. And I'll also grab some papers from my scrap pack. And once I glue these all together, that is an interesting way to create texture. And also, if you're communicating a particular idea, maybe you have some objects around your house that would go along with that. For example, I had a student once who was creating a piece about the culture of prom. And so she actually used some rose petals that she got at prom to create her design. So you don't necessarily have to be that matchy-matchy, but if you can think of, you have objects or something that go along with the idea that you're communicating, it's a really great way to communicate your idea in a stronger way and a more interesting way for the viewer. So let's get this glued. Alright, let's move on to another technique. A lot of you, of course, have practiced using paint and other techniques to create color on your paper, but I wanted to show you a couple interesting ways that you can incorporate color with other materials. One of these materials might be nail polish, so you can actually use nail polish on your paper. Maybe this goes along with your design as well. You just paint it right on there like paint. It's neat because you can get a lot of different metallic colors that you wouldn't necessarily see in paint with nail polish, and once it's dry, it's going to provide a nice hard shiny surface for your design. So that's kind of interesting and something that you might not have thought about adding to your piece of art. Okay, another interesting type of color that you can add that you might have around your house is tea. So I brewed just a regular cup of tea according to the instructions on the package, and I'm going to actually use that as paint in my my square here. So we're going to go ahead and grab some tea from the cup and just start adding it to the paper. It's going to give you a really nice faint color, but it might be something that you're looking for. If you want to age something, painting with tea or coffee, it's a great way to age paper, make it look nice and antique and classic. So it's probably a little hard for you to see, and it might require a couple coats to get it darker. Okay, let's move on to a third technique. So we've talked about objects, we've talked about adding alternative color methods. Now let's talk about adding alternative objects. So something you might not have thought about is incorporating natural objects into your piece of art. This is really interesting if you're doing something that involves nature with your idea. Leaves and grass sort of create a very different texture than you're used to seeing in a lot of different artwork. So I urge you to get creative and see what you can find out there, and if it's something that works with your idea, of course. So I've just gathered several different leaves here. It's going to be easy to glue some of the flat ones down with a regular glue stick. Something like this that's more three-dimensional, we might need chunkier glue, even just Elmer's glue that you get, the white glue that's liquid. That will probably work a little bit better for this. But we can sort of glue these down to get an interesting texture here. So I've even seen people kind of build objects from them. So say if we wanted this to be like the ground, we could even use these to build a nice little, grassy floor for the piece. And then maybe, maybe the little three-leaf clover here represents the sun. You can do a lot with it. It doesn't necessarily have to be abstract. It can actually be illustrating a concrete concept for your audience. So let's get those glued down. Okay, now let's talk about found objects. Of course, plants are an example of found objects. Found objects are just objects that you find. You don't traditionally see them used in artwork. Not paint, colored pencils, things like that. We're talking about actual objects in your artwork. So found objects, of course, can be leaves. They also can be like the ticket stubs we found before, we used before. But some other non-traditional found objects that we can think about, more concrete actual objects. We've got candy wrappers. This is a piece of gum. It creates this nice shiny foil around it. Has this nice shiny foil. So we're going to take that off and see if we can incorporate that into the artwork here. Creates a very interesting texture, especially on this paper that already has a little bit of a shiny area. This is just a plastic bag. I cut a little piece off the plastic bag from the grocery store. So that could be interesting, especially because it's a little bit transparent on the background here. You can see through it. And not sure if you guys have these anymore, but a random CD. So if you do have random old CDs around, computer software that we don't install on CDs anymore, anything like that, CDs can be a really interesting texture on our piece of art too. If we can actually cut the CD. Make sure you have sharp scissors here and be careful. I can actually cut pieces of this out and use it in my art piece too. It creates, again, another shiny thing. So it kind of goes along with my theme here that I have going on my paper. So you can use those types of objects too. Not just, paper objects, natural objects, but also, random non-traditional things that you might just have laying around your house. You can kind of give them new life by incorporating them into an art piece. And again, it can help you communicate the concept that you're illustrating a little bit better. So we'll get those glued down too. Okay, for the next technique, I want to show you something that I truly love in an easy at-home way that you can do. So one of my favorite types of art is printmaking. Printmaking is where you make some sort of almost like a stamp, like a giant stamp, and so you can apply ink to it and make many prints of a drawing, some sort of design that you've created. So it's a really neat type of artwork that I just really enjoy. So we're going to do a little at-home printmaking here with a styrofoam plate. So what I did was I took a styrofoam plate and I cut the flat part out of it, out of the center. We're just going to use this flat part, and what we're going to make is something called a plate. A plate is the thing that you draw or carve your design into. In this case, it's going to be drawing our design. So I'm just going to do a really simple design since I just want to show you how this works. And let's see, my design's just going to be like a cube. We'll do that. So I'm drawing this design with my pencil, which means that it is pressing down on the styrofoam. So we're going to pretend I have a vanishing point back here. Remember, linear perspective. And I'm going to color in my cube here that I've created. Press it down a little bit more. And basically, everywhere I press, that's where the ink is not going to stick. Okay? So if I were to apply ink to this, it's not going to stick to my design. And then when I put it on my paper, basically the ink that is all around my design is going to stick to my paper. So I could, let's create a couple other shapes here. Just a triangle, square, just some other things so I can show you how it works here. Heart. Generic design. You'd want to make sure your design has something to do with your concept, of course. And we'll add a star too. Why not? Okay, so I've really colored in my designs here, and we're going to add paint to it now. So this is probably the only thing you're going to do in class that's not going to work with watercolor paint. This is just a tube of acrylic paint. Tempera paint would work. Any kind of thicker paint. So just not watercolor, just because it's too watery. It's not even going to stick to this. You could try it. You know, I encourage you to experiment a little bit, because that is always fun. But I'm just going to go ahead and paint the paint onto my printing plate here. It's probably not going to be perfect. That's okay. We'll see how it goes. A lot of this is experimenting, and that is, I think, the fun of it. My favorite part about mixed media artwork and other process-based artwork where we're not exactly sure how it's going to turn out. That's my favorite part. It's kind of a surprise. All right, so now that I have my ink applied, my paint applied to my printing square here, my plate, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and put it onto my paper, and I'm going to smooth this all out with a spoon. So remember, I'm kind of making myself a little stamp here, and I just really want to smooth it out, and we'll see what remnants of my design actually came through when we peel it off. Alright, so we see the star actually showed up the best, the cube looking pretty good, and I can see the triangle. My side designs not so much, so maybe I would go back and press those in a little bit harder as I'm drawing. But that, in essence, is kind of a neat way that you can do printmaking. So that is so fun. I really enjoy it. All you need is a styrofoam plate, a little bit of paint, and a spoon to smooth it all out. So awesome things that you might already have around your house to do that. Okay, I've saved the absolute best for last for the technique that we're going to go over next. Something I talked about earlier called image transfer, how I got the eyeballs on my mixed media piece that I showed you at the beginning of this video. Basically, image transfer is where you get a photograph to transfer onto a given surface. So our surface that I'm demonstrating today is paper. You could also transfer it onto paper where you've already painted, a collaged surface. I could transfer it onto any one of these squares just because it's a very versatile kind of technique. However, this technique is the one thing I'm going to show you where you need something a little out of the ordinary that we haven't used before, and that is called gloss acrylic gel. So it doesn't have to be a giant container like this. I happen to have a giant one, but you could get gloss acrylic gel at any store that sells art paint. So that would be any arts and crafts store. You could probably find in the aisle with the acrylic paint. So we're going to try this out. I'll show you the first part of this technique, and then we have to wait a while for it to dry before I can show you the second part. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm taking the cap off my gloss acrylic gel, and I'm going to put down a nice bed of acrylic gel on my paper here. I want kind of a lot, okay? This acts as the thing that basically that the picture actually attaches to. So we're going to put that on here, make sure that we have enough on there, and I'm going to go ahead and paint it all the same direction. This is also a neat way to incorporate texture, so you can use the gloss acrylic gel for a lot of different things. Alright, so then I'm pressing my design way into the gel, and again I'm going to use my handy dandy spoon to really smush this out, make sure it's super duper attached there. Unfortunately, the next step is waiting. So we do have to wait quite a while for the gloss to dry. Usually I would say about 6 to 8 hours. You really want to make sure it's dry because what we're going to do next is going to be pretty rough on the material here. So just make sure that it's smushed down, and I would say wait about 8 hours and we'll go to the next step. I found that actually about 4 hours will do it for drying your acrylic gloss medium. So we're moving on to the next step, which is you just need to take a wet washcloth, maybe really make it damp, and we're going to start basically applying water to where we glued down our acrylic gloss medium down our picture, and really get it as wet as possible. Then we want to start rubbing it to remove the paper, and it should show our design underneath. So let's find out. Alright, so when you are done, you'll find that the image should have copied for you. So you know there are some imperfections, and that's okay. I think it kind of makes it a little like a ghost-like image. You can have fun with that. But anyway, yeah, that's how you do an image transfer. I hope that you enjoyed all the techniques we went over in the mixed media video here. These are all just optional techniques that you can try for your project. You don't have to include any of them. So just have fun with it, experiment, and I really hope you enjoy the project. Thanks for watching.